It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
Welcome. We're podcasting again. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Today we've got Peter Lawrence and Paul Weedell joining us again.
Hey.
And I'm Kyle Bacher, and I'm going to ask these guys about custom software development because I've done low code and all sorts of other types of stuff on different platforms, configuring and that kind of stuff. But you guys actually write code. And I believe the shared experience between the three of you is about 700 years. So
right around there.
You're the right people to ask.
Pretty close.
So I think it was the CEO of Microsoft that said, and I know it is because I looked it up, so I'm kind of cheating. Every company will be a software company. And that kind of leads me to why. I'm going to say, why is that true?
All right. Can I ask first which Microsoft CEO said it?
Satya?
So the most recent CEO.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, why custom software development?
Who wants to go first?
Chad, I think you should go first.
Well, okay. So I'm actually...
Unless you want to go second.
A few things to say about this. So two things. One, the working within the confines of a packaged solution is difficult, right? God bless SAP for their market share and for what they do for certain consulting companies as far as, providing jobs and opportunities and things like that. But it is a box, right? And it has only so many knobs and switches. So when you need to do something special, you are constrained by, and I don't think I'm saying anything super non-obvious here, right?
I'm not shocked yet.
Right. You're not constrained. I mean, you're constrained by, by the confines of the box that you bought. You literally put yourself in a box and that is where you live. Until you get to custom integration solutions with SAP, right? And those aren't necessarily SAP. They kind of poke a couple of holes, give you a little light. And then folks like us get to come in and rip those open and actually all of the custom things that you wouldn't be able to do within the confines of this little box. And I've gone through that numerous times where, we bought this box and the box can only ever be a box. And then we get involved and we're like, well, we have the opportunity, damn near limitless customization and opportunity, right? Like if you can think about it, by and large, and I'm thinking, the solutions that we're brought in to solve, right? Like I can't cure cancer with software yet. I'm trying.
But you could help somebody cure cancer by writing software for them.
But if somebody needed a tool set that would help them get there faster, we can provide that. You guys go.
So I worked inside the box, and every time I hit the limitations, the answer was, we can do that, but it's going to require custom software development. So that's where I stopped, is where you guys began, kind of in my world of doing the low code stuff.
I mean, I honestly want to know, does SAP use SAP out of the box? Because that would be an interesting, do they customize SAP to run their business?
I think these big vendors like SAP, and I'll throw Salesforce in this this group. They have their way of doing things.
Absolutely.
And if you do it their way, they play nice with you. You don't need those custom integrations. You don't need any of that stuff. You're following their pattern. I think they build their product to follow how they run their company.
If you are willing to change your business to fit their model.
I was just literally an hour ago, I was chatting with a former client who is not happy that they're deciding to switch over to the Salesforce way. She believes that all the custom work that has been done up to this point will get phased out, and they will have to adopt the Salesforce way of doing business
for a while. And then someone will want something that isn't in the box, and so they will say, "Hey, I know there's this company that can help us integrate with Salesforce." I mean, Kyle, you have experience with Salesforce and doing things with Salesforce. Bringing SDG into the Salesforce fold was not without some changes.
Yeah, we had to do, we brought in an add-on, Financial Force. There's a lot of customizations, a lot of things that happen behind the scenes when you do this, there's a workflow, there's some automation behind it, and we do a lot with it. Do what we're doing with what we got when we just flip the switch, and we tailored it for the way we do our business. And there's a lot of it we don't use, which is kind of telling.
But how much have we had to change our company to fit? I can think of one example. Chad and I used to be, had we operated pre-Salesforce, we would be part of the Java practice. Now we have business units, and we're part of business unit 2.
Right.
Peter, I think you're part of business unit 1. Is that right?
I'm in 3, actually.
3, okay.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Just a business unit and a number. How could you ever get confused? But I believe that was a constraint or something that was introduced because of Financial Force or Salesforce.
We had to scale. The way we did it initially didn't match how we needed to scale up with the number of practices we had. We've added design, we've added a lot of things, and that are within business units and specializations and things like that. So we had to kind of make it more generic. And then,
but wouldn't you say that the product influenced how we did that? They provided a framework for us to run our company based on their product.
Yeah, but we had to make some changes to that. But we also had to add some other things to work around, because we couldn't go back with that change. We didn't want to go back and update every single thing we had done that used that, so that we could do reporting and things like that. So it's easier just to change the names and then build kind of a substructure.
I think, that's an example of a product influencing the customer and causing the customer to make changes to fit that product. Kind of like what Chad was saying.
Yeah, definitely, because of the limitations and the way it was built. It wasn't built for that specific thing.
So that's one kind of
that's just one
software development.
A lot of the functionality.
I think the kind we like to do, the kind that as a consultant that we can come into a customer, they say, we have a need, and we don't have that box necessarily. They may say, we have this need and we have this box, please make it work for us. We have a need. We can say, what do you need?
So that's, I call it freshly fallen snow, but I was corrected yesterday. Greenfield projects where they just have a need. They're not coming to you saying, we need you to extend the functionality of something. It's, we need help. We want to do this. So you come in, that's kind of the spark. It starts with like an assessment or discovery phase. Is that accurate? Is that where it begins?
For a project, that's how we like to do it. We like to go in and we like to learn about their need and what they're looking for, what they have that exists already, what constraints or what kind of assumptions are we making to get our software developers enough information and enough, I guess, budget in most cases, while being able to buy custom software for infinite amount of dollars. Most companies are not willing to just say, go ahead and get started. We'll stop you when we run out of money. It's usually we have a fixed amount of money. So you're kind of constrained in that way, but you're trying to get that need met, right? And fit it within the constraints of that company. So we'll do an assessment oftentimes, come into a company and assess the situation, see what exists already, what platform are they on, what software developers do they have? Do they have any software developers? Do they have none? Are we going really greenfield where we get to choose the best of the best everything for them? Or are we just going, the best Microsoft solution because they do Microsoft technologies, or the best Java solution because they already have Java developers? Just trying to get that assessment done and help solve people's problems, give them software that they want.
So you don't come in hard and go, this is absolutely what you need to do, and this is what we like.
I mean, that's the fun thing. We were describing, some things being a box, right? We're not a box. We come in with cardboard, tape, whatever else you need to build a box to suit that company, but we're not coming in trying to fit things into a space. That's what I would say.
You have all the phases. You start with discovery, and then I'm assuming there's, kind of forming the teams and deciding, getting all that together.
Forming, norming, and storming.
And then
performing.
Getting started. But you also have to kind of look, into the future and figure out like what happens afterwards. You're thinking about like leaving. Isn't that what we do? Is we go in to solve problems and then put ourselves out of business?
Well, for that particular project, yes, absolutely. And then we can go look at something else, right? But yeah, the idea is to not, as a consultant, I am not trying to become a employee of your company for the life of your company or my lifetime. I'm trying to be there, help with the problem, solve the problem, and then leave the solution to maintain and to help support it.
So there's a lot of other players in like large software development projects. You got your project management side of things, the UI, the front end, all that kind of stuff. Who has to kind of do the discovery? Where do you guys fit into that? Or that, like how soon do you have to come in? Who's also part of that discovery team? Is it just you guys going in?
I think it kind of varies. A lot of times it will be, the sales team along with the managing directors will figure out who needs to be at the table to help come up with a solution, right? Is it a low-code solution? Do we need low-code developers there? Is it, they only want front-end development for this. They have the back-end all existing, and they have to use that existing back-end. So, okay, we'll bring in front-end developers. Is it the full package? So we need architects and maybe some DevOps folks to try to manage their process if they don't have one already, right? I mean, there's so many places that SDG can help elevate everybody's game. And that's the way I kind of try to look at it is I'm not there to take over a position. I'm there to coach a position or help out somebody, help with architecture decisions. I don't have to live with any of the architecture, right? Because I'll be gone eventually, right? So I have to help them come to an architecture decision that solves their problem and works within the constraints that they have. Chad, you're kind of working on sort of bigger projects where you've got a large team involved. When you started on day one, walked into the client with your briefcase and your thermos of coffee and I don't know what else would describe the penultimate geek, or ultimate geek, I guess, not penultimate.
A big bag of breakfast sandwiches for the team.
Oh, the breakfast sandwiches, yes. So how big was your team when you started out?
It started just me. We brought on, there was another resource at the client that I could use when I had work for him. Mm-hmm. But really it was just me for at least a month. Mm-hmm. After a month, we grew to 3 people, then 5 people, then 10. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. And they've come and gone, and it's still we're still working. But one of the things, and we've talked about this before, Peter, just the fact that they would bring you in or me in, right? Like there's already some technology architectural decisions made ahead of time, right? Like if you're going in for a large engagement, you could probably assume it's a Microsoft project, and Paul and I will likely assume that we're being brought in to work in Java or Spring, Java/Spring, kind of synonymous these days, to build something. And so I come in and I don't necessarily try to, if there have been outside of just the platform itself that we're going to build on, right? Pay a lot of attention to other architectural constraints until I know what the product is going to be and what the product is, what the long-term goals of the product are, right? Because we might get into a situation where, like, yes, they have the whole CI/CD pipeline is there and blah blah blah, and here's where we are today, and then you have a product owner whose vision is we're going to build a thing. This is going to scale to 1 billion people, right? Like they're trying to build Facebook or Snapchat or one of the big, what are there, like 5 things with 1 billion users? Yep. And so you have to throw out a lot of those architectural assumptions. And my current engagement, we had to kind of do that too, right? Like the direction of the product and the existing infrastructure and architecture didn't jive, right? So we had to get creative. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of our role, and Paul does this really well too, where like you just kind of negotiate with various people, both from the business side to understand where it's going, and then from the IT leadership side to see like where could we bring our platforms internally to support this guy's vision, and you guys work out how you pay for it, right? Like I'm just going to do to work and take everybody to happy hour afterwards. Right. So Paul, you've been in that boat too, right? Where like you have a product vision and an architectural reality that might not necessarily jive immediately.
Sometimes you look at the status quo with what they're doing and where they want to go, and you look at the things you have to work with, and you say, well, is it realistic for us to build what they want with what they have, or recommend they make some changes and talk about, well, okay, if we, and you can kind of lay out, okay, if we do it the way it is, it'll take this many more hours. We're not sure that it'll work as well as you want, or, hey, we could add this new thing and, it'll cost this. We'll have to train your people, but this is what you get. Does that sound good to you? Or no, you like the old way? And let them decide. Is that important to them? Is that what they want to do?
Yeah, and
you kind of tee up all the options and recommendations, and then we don't really make decisions for.
Yeah, I prefer not to. Really don't want to make decisions
unless asked.
No, even when asked, I don't want to. But
no, I mean that's a recommendation, and there are industry standard ways of doing things, and if someone asks me, I'm not going to recommend doing it in a non-standard fashion, even if their last 6 consulting firms have said that we should do this non-standard thing and it'll be awesome. You try to use the best possible options and give them choices to fit. Never. I mean, we've talked about this over and over. We never try to prescribe a solution 100% must be done this way. This is what we're doing. We're implementing the vision. We're guiding the client to get there. And like Chad said, sometimes the vision is a little bit out ahead of the reality, and we have to pencil in the lines to get us there.
You know what I like having? I mean, I was fortunate enough, I was able to bring a peer onto this with me early on, because I think we're all capable of solving like really, really hard problems, right? Like that's kind of what we do. The harder the problem, the more convenient it is to have a like an angel and a devil on your shoulder, right? Like
sounding board, a rubber duck.
Yeah, there you go. Sounding board, to be like, here's how I'm thinking of solving this. Like, I don't necessarily over-engineer. Yeah, the rubber ducky. I don't try to over-engineer, but I think I find myself in that, like, swimming down that lane a little bit once in a while. And so the ability, if it's within your control, having a sounding board for a lot of what we do in the custom app dev space, because like I am biased towards my tech stack and the tools that I've learned and used over the last quarter century. It's just that, right? Like it's a bias, like it's my comfort level with a tool set. And us being eminently billable consistently, like availability to go find and play with other libraries, with other tech stack, with other chains. Like I'm not as available as I used to be for that stuff. So
JavaScript frameworks come to mind, right?
Yeah, just exactly that, right? Like JavaScript frameworks. All our stuff on Java is the Java language itself is kind of prescribed, right? Like we know how we're going to do 80% of the job.
There's kind of a well-beaten path. No, it's pretty well established, but there are things that we could do that you and I probably just aren't. We have blind spots to them, and getting that added perspective, like you're saying, can really help, especially if they're not the same perspective. Somebody else may have some experience with product or technique, and you can learn about it and go, oh yeah, that does look like it'd be really helpful.
Right. Yeah. You might be it might be your first time doing Kubernetes or something along that lines, where it'd be like, well, I've read a lot about it. It seems really cool. And rubber duck, is this a good idea for this particular place, right? Or folks at SDG, is this a good idea for this particular problem that I'm solving?
Yeah. This is why I loved, like some sort of tech DNA roadmap, something where I could actually see, okay, here's what if we're a technology company, here's what other folks are using in their engagements. Right. If I've been on Rails going down one path for a very, very long time, I can see not only do I have a list of options here that I might not be familiar with, but I'm going to guess that the fact that it's there are folks that have actually contributed to that a resource that I could tap internally. And that's what SDG does really great. Like knowledge sharing internal to SDG is one of our secret sauces that we encourage quite a bit. I like 100%. To not make these such a huge sales pitch for SDG, but like it's true, right? Like I've picked up a lot of alternative solutions to problems just by working with other SDG consultants who are like at or above the same experience level that I'm used to, or that I am, right? So yeah, that's, I mean, when we talk about custom app development, there's two. I mean, it's always, as opposed to buying a box, right, and living in that box, right? Or in addition to that box, right? Like you got your box and you need to do other things, other integrations, you got to integrate with other solutions. And so that's what we bring to the table, is we just blow up the opportunities and say like, okay, you've got one way of doing things over here. It doesn't fit with what your business objectives are. Talk to us, tell us write those down, and literally almost anything is possible.
Time and money.
Yeah.
Kyle, from a low-code perspective, what's low-code kind of drags a little bit of box with it? Is that to continue the metaphor?
It's a tool set, and you're confined inside that ecosystem to use what's available. There's so many things, so many moving parts, and I'm going to say it, Chad.
Yeah,
SharePoint. Sorry. A lot of there's negotiation there. That you probably don't have to deal with. Like talking somebody out of a font.
It's rare that I talk someone out of a font.
Yeah,
I would love for that to be the problem.
That's the hardest thing I ever done, Chad. No, but it's with that sort of black box solution, that they're trying to drive toward. The more that happens, the harder they make it to do custom. They don't want you to do custom because they have to support Machine Cloud. It's running on their hardware, so they have to support it, and they have, they make changes all the time. That's another thing, is keeping up with those changes. They keep you confined. There's not, a lot of opportunity just out of the box to do like custom CSS even. They deliberately, when you save the page, it recodes all of the IDs and everything. So that all your styles break. It works once, and then you refresh the page and it's all toast. So I think, it's a different set of problems. And I often wished I was doing custom development so that I didn't have to have those, conversations. I don't like disappointing people. I am a people pleaser. So when they asked me for stuff, I really wanted to be able to do it. And you'd hit that wall. It's like it can do anything 80% of the way.
Right.
That last 20% is 80% of the work on the project.
Or even 90-10,
I don't think
right?
what you talked about is all that different from what we have to deal with. We have our boxes. They may not be a specific product, but we always have constraints that we have to deal with. They may be due to products that we have to integrate with, culture, the clients, just the scope of the project. There are going to be constraints. I really don't think what you talk about is that different from what we do.
I'm convinced that my job is the hardest. I'm a hero.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously that's true, but it's also similar. We're just heroes to a lesser extent.
It is. And that's kind of when you're doing, I have to, I use products like Nintex and to do automation and like the workflows within our different products. Now every product has an automation side of it. And that still requires, getting it to do what they want it to do, and logic and integration and all that kind of stuff. So it's just doing it differently. I'm dragging and dropping, and then I'm configuring. But it's still, at the end of the day, behind the scenes, it's code running on servers. It's just like anything else.
100%. And if you customize it too far, then you've got a support problem, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that we've talked about when the new versions of Java or .NET come out, and they've deprecated something that maybe your favorite or not, who knows? But those kind of tool changes for the better overall, but that doesn't help your particular problem when you have to go through and fix up your code to get rid of all the deprecated things.
We had like a run of migration projects. Like 2/3 of the stuff we were doing was migrations and not from one platform to another, but one version of a platform to the next version. A lot of lessons learned there on our end and on Microsoft's end. Those a lot of customizations that happened. You know, they gave you the ability to break things, and boy, did we break a lot of stuff to make it work, to give people what they wanted. But then when it came time to migrate, hit that upgrade button, and it does not go well. And you have to go back and you have to fix the old stuff to move it over to the new stuff. So that was just a challenge we ran into. But yeah, and you guys have that. There's tool sets you use, and
there are. It's to a different extent. Those libraries change. Those libraries get updated. Sometimes they also get maintained for quite a while. I know long-term support is always the fun letters to hear, and then things going out of long-term support are still being using unsupported, because that's the choice the business has made, and nothing you can do about it except offer them guidance that that's not the right way to do things.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a responsibility when you're using these. When you're in the box, when you're using these products, there's kind of a responsibility on the side of the manufacturer to not destroy everything that runs your business. You know, it took, I'm sure there's still InfoPath running out there, and that they've been trying to kill that for.
And that was a 10-year notice,
so.
Right? They gave you 10 years of notice on getting rid of it, and it's still probably out there, like you said. I think that's a little bit of a difference between low code and sort of the custom software development that the other three of us do, is that code may march on. If you build an executable and it runs on Windows or on Linux or on something like that, it will probably run on those things far longer than the language is supported.
Yeah, how long did it take? I mean, Internet Explorer to
a long time.
I think it's still there, isn't it?
It's still behind the scenes in Edge.
It's still in Windows 11.
There's a mode. They left it. There's still companies out there using really old technology.
Yeah, I was at a client, and I was asked to work on this really old app, and I was looking at the source code, and in the comments, they had the author's name, and Warren Goldman, one of our senior consultants who's been with us a good long time, he actually wrote the system in the year 2000, and it is still, to my knowledge, I know for a fact it's still in use today. A Swing application, Java Swing, which I don't think we've started a Swing project in the last 20 years, to give you a hint on how current this technology is. But that application is in use, and it is still up and running. You think about that. Everything that Warren did is living on today, and I had to work within that box to make things work. And to Warren's credit, it's an enduring application that is still functional. They don't get bugs against it. It's not not the nicest app. It's not what we would choose to use today, but it gets the job done.
It's the Great Pyramid of Giza. We have no idea how he did it. It's lost. He's still around. He knows.
He knows.
Yeah. Well, to his credit, they don't need to call him. He did a great job to where people can figure out how it works. He followed established patterns.
Standards.
People can understand how it works.
I think that's a good point, is if you stay within the conventions, that's what's going to be considered when they do the next upgrade. They're going to make sure it works smoothly with that. If you followed the rules and the way it's done and the best practices, whatever those are, then that's your best shot at endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly nobody could blame you for following the best practices. You always get your hand slapped when you make a decision to go veer off of that path because you think this is a better solution, and down the road it turns out that it isn't supported or gets painful to get back onto that path.
Yeah, and we've mentioned JavaScript libraries or JavaScript frameworks. There was a long string of JavaScript frameworks for quite a while that were coming through and changing and going away and being created and living for 2 years and then not being as supported as some of the Angular or React or Vue that we have now.
I don't hear jQuery mentioned much. And I don't know the last time I heard the word Silverlight or ActiveX.
No, dead.
That's an interesting point. Is there's a lot of pressure to help with that platform selection and make sure you back the right horse. How do you do that?
You don't sometimes. I mean, my last one of my previous things, this was before I was at SDG, we picked a framework called Apache Wicket, right, which was a open source kind of a mashup of server-side and client-side JavaScript frameworks. And it showed a lot of promise early on. And so we picked it for our custom app. And the project, kind of fizzled out, right? Like you make a choice, you go with it. We have fallen into architectural patterns that make bad decisions easier to correct, I think, to a big degree. And that was not even bad decisions, but you lose an open source project, key library in your solution, and because we separate the view layers and the service layers and the model, like all of these layers are, so at least if we're doing our job, kind of towards with industry standards in mind, we've separated these layers out.
Right.
So yeah, a bad decision on a framework might cost you some time. It's not the end of the world anymore. There's building on you mentioned Swing. Mm-hmm. That's an ecosystem that you might end up in that you make that decision early, and well, now you're just kind of there, right? Like that view layer is a little bit more ingrained in the solution than what we do today, right?
Big time, yeah.
Yeah. So I did a project using the Eclipse framework, right? The widget kit that they used to build Eclipse. There used to be I forget now even what they called the
SWT. Was it?
Yeah, that's it. SWT. Yeah, because we used to call it SW because Sisters with Voices was huge at the time, so we always mislabeled it. We try to, as much as possible, like tie the entire solution into like one bad framework choice. I had a situation recently where there was kind of a key component of an application that was driven by an open source library that again showed a lot of promise, kind of an in-memory database kind of thing, and super active library at the time we picked it, and then we picked it almost at its peak, and then it fizzled, and you are stuck now. Congratulations, you've just adopted an open source project as part of your solution. That's, again, like kind of a bummer, but choices, you've got options. You're not just glued to it as to the degree that you might think, Kyle. Like these, you can't be too squirrely up front and just like, what is it? Analysis paralysis? Is that what they call it?
Yeah,
On the,
you gotta, at some point, you gotta make a choice.
Yeah, you pull the trigger, and it helps if you've actually been screwed over a couple of times, or not, or just had a project that you rely on
not become as popular as you were hoping.
Right. You're using a more work appropriate word than I was going to use. Thank you, Peter. I kind of need you to just kind of be around all the time for me. You'd be surprised at the things.
I know there's a shorter way to put it, but yeah, it didn't gain in popularity the way you were hoping. I know ORMs for a while were going through some churn, right? Because they came out of nowhere, and then everybody decided they wanted to build one, and then not all of them won. I've used a couple, mostly used Microsoft's Entity Framework. If Entity Framework were to go away, we'd put a different ORM in there.
Yeah, I ran into sort of a crisis at one point in my career when they took away the GUI of SharePoint Designer.
Mm-hmm.
I used Designer for everything, and I was a wizard with it. Did all sorts of awesome, cool things, and then they took away my tools.
Took away your wand.
I had to shift. I had to adjust to that. And that's frightening because that's kind of your thing. I work in the factory making cassette tapes, and I'm really good at using that machine. So has that happened? Does that happen with custom code and frameworks and all that stuff? I mean, I know Silverlight went away pretty quickly, but when you're using the development tools.
No, it didn't go away quickly. It went away slowly and with lots of fighting. I know this because I've had to do Silverlight development, and it was already on the 10-year plan at that point, right? So, yeah, there are times where we get to coax things along a little bit longer than they should have been.
You're convincing me now that our lives are not so different. Well, now I'm a different, I'm not on the consulting side of things anymore, but I still run into that. I'm basically a consultant for our own company.
Right.
I just work inside. They just ask me to do stuff, and I try to do it. Sometimes I do good. And
right. Java's gone through a lot of evolution, right? And it's 25 plus years. I can't remember if it's 25 or more, but I mean, EJB
Little more.
used to be a cool 3-letter acronym that was tossed around a whole bunch, and
Oh yeah,
that's gone. Right?
What is EJB stand for?
Enterprise Java
Java
Bean.
beans.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask me what Java beans are, but the enterprise version of them was sure used a lot.
Not really what they were meant to do is still what we're doing now, but yeah, that's not the tool we're using.
No.
Generally,
So
usually.
what about all the different players on the field in these projects? A lot of times it was just me, but has that I haven't really done a full blown huge 20-person like project. A lot of those I've done some big projects before, but it didn't seem to be that scale where we were doing the automated QA and user research. We didn't have those specific that expertise across different roles. It was kind of just doing it ourselves. So what has changed, I guess, in the custom development world?
Nothing really. I mean, we still have QA resources. We still have BAs. We still have project managers. They take on different, I don't know. I think fundamentally we have developers, QA resources, business analysts, and some sort of project manager role. Right? Like that's been relatively steady state for, I don't know, Paul, Paul, me and Paul are the same age pretty much,
And
right?
we are very close.
Very, very close. Very, very close. One of us is pickled no, kidding. But fundamentally, I don't think the team structure has changed drastically. Sometimes there's overlap between roles, right? Like developers and QA and kind of, like you mentioned, the automation tools, and
Right.
that becomes slightly more dev tasky.
Yeah, QA automation has probably gone quite a bit ahead of where it was 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, DevOps has been a change. Cloud has introduced a little bit of that for us, although it's kind of a cycle because way, way, way back in the day, you might have to know a lot more about spinning up a server and putting software on it and connecting it to the network and exposing it to the internet and running it through the firewall and those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, Unix system admins, that's not really a role anymore that exists in the world, but we call them DevOps resources now, right? Like, I think that role evolved into this.
Yeah.
With a little with some differences, but fundamentally you're still, as far as our topic is custom app development, and the roles are very, very, how do I say this without offending anybody? Because that's a thing I'm really worried about all the time.
I'll clean it up for you.
Thanks, man.
How about I take a crack? Go ahead.
I can see like 25 years ago, my very first project work, personas in different roles. And then fast forward to today, when, the whole product movement has evolved and Agile and Scrum has evolved to what it is today. And our job has evolved to be what it is. And, Unix admins are now DevOps and QA automation tools. All of that stuff happens, right? But the same kind of types of folks are still in the same kind of types of roles, I think. They're in those lanes. Talk about those roles a little differently than we did back in the Clinton administration.
And the lanes shift a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And the lines between them kind of, they go away, they come back together, they go away, all of that.
Paul, did you want to take some more shots at that?
No, Chad did a wonderful job there. But yeah, it's like the needs for the project just don't really change at a certain level. Have a vision for what to build, have to have people build it, have people make sure it works right, have people who make sure it gets done on time, and have to have people to make sure that it's running on whatever platform it's running on.
Right. We're not shipping out CDs anymore, but we are still installing software onto computers to run and do work, right?
My last thought is the kind of the embarrassment of riches of the cloud. Is it ever too much, too many options, too much cool stuff coming too fast? Keep up with that. How do you, we talk about discovery, platform selection, things like that. The way it's done hasn't changed, fundamentally. But with these, it's kind of a different layer. You're taking a step back from the hardware, like the DBA side of things. Is DBA still a role?
Yeah. DBAs are still a thing, I think. I haven't worked with a dedicated DBA in quite a while, but we have worked with, folks that write reports and reports are essentially just complicated SQL queries working with data lakes and other tools, right? Like that role for me seems to have shifted into this report writing type role that works with slightly different tool set. I don't know. I don't know that the it still comes back to the same thing, right? Like we custom app development, we've got some, you already know, like, okay, we need developers, we need blah blah blah, all of this stuff. The cloud hasn't made that much different. I still need a Unix system admin. Now I just call him a DevOps guy, and his beard's a little shorter, and his taste in music is a little better.
His T-shirt has a different band on the front of it.
His T-shirt has a different band on it. He probably has a cat now. I don't know. Anyway, I don't keep on top of what's in the cloud. We get to a certain point. And for me, like I get, maybe this is a privilege but like they come to us now and say, hey, like I've had meetings with AWS recently to get previews of different functionalities that they're building in AWS, right? I'm an AWS guy, so we get that. And that's really nice. I think it's a problem that they recognize. Like that AWS service dropdown used to have like 5 things in it, and now it has 3 deep menus.
200, yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's close to 200 now.
Yeah, so you're not going to keep that all in your head. And honestly, like I don't need to, right? Like I was just, I don't think I'm spilling any beans here. They're developing this thing called AWS Optimax. It's a linear programming in the cloud model, right? So basically something that you throw algebraic equations at and they spit down, like route optimizations and things like that. Like it's this whole software as a service that they're going to provide. That's super neat. But like, if I don't have a use case for those problems, I don't ever need to know that it's out there. And I'm sure there are a lot of AWS services very close to that, where like, yeah, they're solving a super, super important problem. When I have that problem, I'll do some research, and I'm sure if there's an AWS solution for it, I'll start there. I might not end there, but that's where I'll begin.
So I was going to answer it just a little bit shifted from that. I was going to talk about learning about AI. I do not spend my nights learning about AI. Chad does, and then he filters out the good stuff, and then I learn about that stuff from Chad. Same goes for a lot of the technologies. There's a lot of folks at STG that learn bits and pieces and work with it at their client, and then I get to take advantage of it. I get to talk to those smart people and learn what I truly need to know.
I've been using the new Chat GPT search all day because somebody put out a thing about it and said it was kind of neat.
But that's, again, I get back to that. That's SDG's secret sauce. Like that's why it helps our consultants at SDG a lot to know what other people are working on, what their tool sets, technology stacks, all of that, right? Like it's a hard problem. You're not wrong, Kyle. Like being on top of every cloud service provider and then having to understand, okay, like, because I'm sure at some point I'll work with Azure, right?
Yep.
I dip my toes in once in a while, but I don't know the breadth of their service offering, and that's where relying on other consultants to help you get there is huge, like super huge. We don't. Like Peter said, I don't spend the night. Right, I do. Okay, so I do. So I read a couple of. This is embarrassing. I'm up to date on a few very key AWS announcements. OpenAI announcements. Like there's a few lists that I'm on where it is part of my routine to, read everything they put out every night so that I kind of know. It's not common for that to be a thing though.
No, Robert Hansen did a presentation years ago where he said he just, like when he sees the stuff, he reads a little bit about it, he knows it exists, and he files it away for the future when he, needs to use a tool like that or a new, feature or whatever you call it, service. Well, I've learned a lot today, so that's good. I think that's a good place to shut her down. We should just say goodbye, everybody.
See you guys. Everybody. Well, goodbye.
Thanks for being here.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.